Hey, sorry about that. I forgot to turn my mic on. So, I will not be here but not be here next week, because I need to take a break for self care. Um, that being said, uh, this is something I really wanted to do. I'll be taking a break from Twitch and YouTube, all the YouTube I'd normally be in next week. So, but yeah, I wanted to do this because it relates to ableism, specifically with relation to neurodivergence. And I am an Arcane fangirl, which is how I came across this video. So, no, that's not what I want to do. Oh, wait, I know how to do this. I'll fix this. So I watched about 3 minutes or so to give it a chance, and then I was like, oh, this is a good chance of being bad. So this is not the worst, but this is definitely looking at things through an archetypical story perspective without factoring in the fact that archetypal stories are oftentimes based off of white nationalist narratives. So, and I don't think this person necessarily realizes why what they're saying might be wrong, or they might be right. They might surprise me. They might be using words in a specifically technical manner, and that'll be a good thing, in which case I would definitely want to promote this video. That being said, ableism is one of the less frequently talked about subjects. This is a decently large channel, so I don't feel bad about referencing them. And yeah, so let's get into it so I can take notes, because I will be taking notes because I think I need to, either due to my neurodivergence or whatever. It'll be played at 2x speed. Oh, trigger warning for trauma, ableism, and possibly other stuff. I don't know. I haven't watched this video all the way through.
People hated this scene, and people loved this one. And it's the same scene, essentially. It's a burn it all down moment. It's prompted by death. And despite other characters trying to stop it, despite it coming moments after a long sought-after peace had finally been reached, it was kind of inevitable in hindsight. We should have known just by the character's name. And it wasn't just a disaster, it was this kind of twisted moment of personal triumph for these characters, despite it annihilating the show setting in this really shocking way. So why did this scene work?
The thing is, peace hadn't been reached. Peace would require Silco to give up Jinx. People actually wanted peace, which is not the same as peace being reached or about to be reached. Both Silco and Jinx value loyalty, and they would have to betray that loyalty for the purposes of this, but yeah.
Work and this one failed. And I want to narrow the scope of this video quite a bit. I don't think we need another video saying mostly the same stuff about the Danny scene. Yeah, it failed because they rushed her Manasark. We didn't believe the basis of the gigantic personality shift at first. So the whole scene had no legs to stand on, felt incredibly unjustified for the character. They had like 2 episodes.
There was always subtle stuff, but that's a different sort of thing. It depends on what you're looking for. But yeah.
episode to set things up that should have taken at least one more season, probably two. And that's the part I do want to focus on. If they did have that extra season to do the progression right, what would it look like? And we're going to use our gal Jinx to figure that out. We're going to look into not just her arc, but the way she speaks, some of her mannerisms, how her madness is depicted by the animators, and we're going to get some help from a couple other buddies as well.
Okay, that was actually too fast. I might have to... This person actually talks at decent speed. I'm going to turn this down to 1.5. I know. Got slow ears.
The basis of this gigantic personality shift of hers, so the whole scene had no legs to stand on, felt incredibly justified the character. They had like 2 episodes of setting up that should have taken at least one more season, probably 2. And that's the part I do want to focus on. If they did have that extra season to do the progression right, what would it look like? And we're going to use our gal Jinx to figure that out. We're going to look into not just her arc, the way she speaks, some of her mannerisms, how her madness is depicted by the animators, and we're going to get some help from a couple other buddies as well, Golly, Denny, Billy, Annie, and
I question with regards to this person's definition of madness, which will be coming up.
also some more help from a non-buddy, Dolphy. But madness is our topic today. What goes into a good madness arc? What goes into a good depiction of madness? What foundation is the burn it all down scene built on in an ideal story? And
A good... Sorry, like I said, I just got back from the grocery store.
a more specific question that kept coming up with this topic is that there seems to be a big difference between mental distress and mental illness on the one hand, and madness on the other hand.
So, this person says there's a difference between mental illness and madness. Now, madness oftentimes involves how people view a stereotypical version of mental illness, mental distress.
Mental illness and distress are these things we see characters going through that we relate to with sympathy or empathy. And
Oh my god. I didn't realize this person said sympathy as well. By the way, I perceive a lot of Jinx's experiences in a very sympathetic light. And some of her experiences in an empathetic light. And for... That's a terrible distinction. That's a terrible way to define stuff. Difference between mental illness / distress is you feel sympathy. Oh, you saw this already? I did not see this. Yes, I will need all the trees. Trees, trees, trees. Trees, trees, trees. Trees, trees, trees. Trees, trees, trees. Alright, oh my god, I hate this. I hate this so much. I only processed the empathy part, so I gave this a chance of not being the worst and just being bad. Schnee. I don't know anything about the channel. No. It's a 115,000 subscriber channel. And this has 450,000 views. Now, not all of those views are likes, etc., etc. You can't tell the like to dislike ratio anymore, blah, blah, blah. So, oh god.
because we know mental distress. We've experienced mental illness ourselves or alongside family and friends, and we see fiction using
I hate this. I actually hate this. We know this from real life, but if you're too different, that's okay to not feel sympathy or empathy for you. If you're too extreme, that's okay to hate you. It's justified, right?
these facets of our familiar world. Madness is not that way at all. Madness, most of us don't know from real life. Most of us know it from fiction. The mad scientist.
And notice, this person says most of us don't know from real life. This is an important statement right here. Most. Ugh. Alright, the use of terminology. So, the logical philosophical conclusion, if mental illness and distress is the only that I believe this person says that you don't feel empathy for madness. Also, fuck. Examples: mad scientist. Neurodivergent, over focused on goals over humanity. Mad hermit, neurodivergent, focused on nature over humanity, on not even goals over humanity, because mad scientist is usually scientific results over the cost.
The mad hermit, the mad king, the axe.
Mad King, neurodivergent, portray as unpredictable and unreliable due to form of neurodivergence. Axe murderer, neurodivergent, therefore killer. If you see a trend here, may not even be humanity as a whole, just social fatigue. Maybe. I mean, I'm used to the mad hermit usually referring to a neurodivergent person who just doesn't see humanity as special. So I guess there we go. Focus on nature over the human, focus on humanity.
Murder. We see madness in stories, and it doesn't evoke sympathy or empathy. It scares us.
Oh god, there we go. Madness doesn't evoke sympathy / empathy. It scares us. So like, i.e., if you're too unknown, you are a danger to society. Because that is what madness is. Of those four listed as examples of what counts as madness, only one of those is guaranteed to kill you or even try to kill you. The other three, and notice axe murder is not listed as madness is not listed as for axe murder. Oftentimes axe murders are neurodivergent. Should put often neurodivergent because axe murders aren't always neurodivergent. Even sometimes axe murders are closer to neurotypical, but yeah, no, Jinx 100% is arguably the character I feel the most sympathy and empathy for of any character in all of media. And that is not something, like I said, I'm a huge Arcane fangirl, but like, dear God, this might have to be like the video for a couple weeks after today, because dear God, I hate this.
That stuff isn't resonating because, oh man, yeah, I've been through that. We relate to it as a horror archetype. It resonates like a werewolf resonates.
Oh my God, But Jinx is not a horror character. Madness isn't even exclusively a horror archetype. Sometimes it's a pity archetype. Sometimes it's some other ableist narrative. It's not always a horror archetype.
It's just this horrifying thing to see depicted. Maybe there's some deep-seated fear of becoming that in some way, but it's not.
And there we go. When I said I only got like 2 or 3 minutes in, it was around this point that I stopped and was like, nope, I have to do this. This acknowledges a deep fear of becoming disabled, which is all throughout society. And people aren't looking at why are they afraid. They're just saying, oh, this is a fear thing. A good example of this is I have played all the way through Outlast. And I was a lot scared. I was scared of the people in the exploited the patients in a mental illness facility. I was scared of them for a bit, and until it snapped in my head. No, these are exploited people. In fact, the average person there is not going to hurt you. They're just different, and they're not harmful. They just happen to be atypical in a way that a lot of people find scary, but they're not actually harmful. It's only a small minority of the patients in that game who are actually harmful, and that is pretty true with reality as well. Most people who happen to have because there isn't really a distinction. There's specific mental illness categories for what is generally considered madness, and madness is usually based off of incredibly rare examples of people with a particular brand of privilege.
Not coming from our own experience. So it does seem like these things are different, but where's the line between these categories? What features bring inner conflict to that next level where we call it by this new name? Okay, so I want
to... God, I hate this. I mean, I can answer this question. This question has a simple answer. It's just not an answer that this person would likely enjoy. The answer is that it's essentially Caitlin in Arcane, because I mean, this is about Arcane largely, and I am an Arcane fangirl, and I've watched tons of reactions to Arcane because I'm an obsessive Arcane fangirl who plays League of Legends, and who one of my characters I play as is Vi, and I also play as Warwick and Echo when I happen to be jungling. But that's beside the point. Caitlin often says the phrase "she's too far gone," which is essentially saying, "Hey, this person is not worth keeping alive. This person should be eradicated from the world because this person happens to be the wrong kind of different." Which is why even the songs, like Jinx is the main character of the story, even though she has very little agency until the end of the story, where she does make... Well, she has some agency. She causes a lot of things, but a lot of times she's very driven by how to help other people. She's not and to prove herself, because she has a lot of insecurity for a variety of realistic reasons for the show, but also realistic reasons in terms of certain aspects of people in real life. Anyways, I call plenty of people in League of Legends Milos, because they act like Milo, who is an abusive jerk, who insults Powder constantly so he can kick someone down. But yeah, ultimately it's... If Jinx was in a situation where she didn't have to be on a knife's edge of survival, yeah, she'd be atypical, but she'd be far less dangerous. She doesn't fight for no reason, which is part of the reason why it's easy to sympathize and empathize with Jinx.
I'm gonna get into methodology here, and something interesting we'll see once we explore Arcane's methods a bit is that Game of Thrones was trying really hard to do some of these. They didn't work, but they really tried. Okay, so I'll be honest here. I've been feeling like I've been missing something big when it comes to Jinx for a long...
Oh god. Okay, maybe I got to 5 minutes.
Like this stuff. I've seen people call it Jinx the Scratching, great name for it. We see this, or I see this, and it does feel powerful. It feels like a great tool to depict inner chaos. But it was hard to say anything more than that. Just, yeah, it comes off as very mad.
Yeah, but like, it's a visual representation of emotional triggers, if anything. Which is a real psychological thing, but be careful. That might ruin Jinx's madness arc because he might feel too much sympathy and empathy for her.
Very wild, very demented. Felt like I was missing something. Same with this stuff and the dolls. All feels very much madnessy, but it felt like there's something more foundational going on here.
I mean, it's pretty clear what the ghosts of the people she blames herself for the deaths so far. I mean, like,
let me give you an example using something she says.
Really thought I buried this place. But I should have known better. Nothing ever stays dead.
Okay, so Jinx says a lot of weird stuff, but it's one thing when it's like throwaway lines and jokes, but stuff like nothing ever stays dead, that one sounds important. And it's like in the most important scene of the entire show, and it's not like we have no context here. There is a surface level understanding of what's going on. Jinx spent 7 years thinking Vi was dead, and then all of a sudden, dead.
I mean, that is one explanation of things. You can't nitpick every aspect of what someone says, but yeah. And also, it's the building.
And then there's a layer that goes a bit deeper here. We have Milo. Unlike Vi, this was a
Yeah, but like also they're in the collapsed building. The building that Jinx blew up is the building they're in. You have there's oh yeah, I should have mentioned spoilers for Arcane. I know it's been out for 9 months, and I'm obsessive. I'm an obsessive Arcane fangirl who doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut. So like, there's a theory which I agree with, which is that Vander will become Warwick, and Singed keeping Vander's near dead body, because it's not like they double checked or whatever, might be another factor in terms of her attitude that nothing stays dead. And I think Jinx never sees Vander, so which suggests that Jinx thinks Vander is still alive in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, that would be an aspect of foreshadowing, and you don't need like everything explained.
sibling who was dead, but for Jinx, he didn't stay dead by any means. I mean, we hear her saying this about Vi.
You never left. I always heard you. Shadows in the streets.
There's even more left unsaid about the other sibling that was always there. And this extends to Vi as well, when Jinx thought she was as dead as Milo. But for Jinx's tortured brain, Vi wasn't staying dead either. And then there's also like the more literary level that's also lurking here. You can call it the psychological level, the subtext here. Old trauma, old conflicts, past events that should be firm.
Yeah, and those are all good subtext. And also, Jinx didn't stay. Jinx almost died and didn't stay dead. So that applies to Jinx. That applies to Vi. That applies to Jinx. Might have thought Caitlyn was dead when Caitlyn exploded. That applies to aspects of Vander's attempt to kill Silco. That factors into Jinx, or not Jinx, sorry, Singed. Singed didn't stay dead. Didn't like there are a lot of characters who had very near-death experiences who didn't die. That applies to all of that, not just these small number of things.
Firmly in the past should stay in the past so that you can move on, but they persist. They come back to haunt you, they resurface. The past will always have its claws in the present. So we can say all these things, but ultimately none of these answers are really satisfying.
I don't know why they're not satisfying. That's a good thematic element. Nothing staying dead is also thematic for the entire show. there's only throughout the show, technically, if the theory is true, which, I mean, the only people who stayed dead in some way, shape, or form, I mean, every character had their influence. The only character that really died and stayed dead were Marcus, who is an asshole. Um, the effects of the person Marcus worked for, the kind of sort of okay cop, um, that that person's I don't know why I can't think of her name off the top of my head. Same voice actor as a TV show. Which name? I also forgot the name of the TV show. I'm terrible with names today. Remember Savika, but not Grayson. There we go. Anyways, yeah. So Grayson's influences Caitlin's actions. Vander influences Vi's actions. And Silco's to a certain degree. Like, yeah, sorry. It's very satisfying for me, but
Which was weird because they're coherent, I guess. I can't point to something and say that doesn't make sense. They make decent sense. That's
I mean, it's an emotional reasoning, but yeah.
not the problem. But sometimes there's bad answers, and then sometimes the answers are okay, but there's a growing realization that you're asking the wrong question.
I'm not sure this person was asking the wrong question.
That line, we can talk about what it means, we can get these ideas, but that's not getting to the core of what's going on here. It reminds me of this scene in Star Wars. Obi-Wan tells Luke that Vader murdered his father. Luke finds out that's not true, and he feels kind of betrayed. So Obi-Wan gives him an explanation. Anakin turned to the dark side, and it's like the man he knew died. And that is an idea, but that's not what Luke was asking. The question that really opens up this whole situation is, why did Obi-Wan purposely word it in this misleading way? And with that question, we get this wealth of context. Obi-Wan was charged with protecting Luke, which meant keeping his identity secret precisely so Vader would never find him. And of course, he realized rightly that Luke had this burning curiosity about his father, and he's trying to prevent that from actualizing in any way except learning the ways of the Force. And Obi-Wan knew that Luke looked up to this Jedi Knight version of his father, and that seemed healthy, and Obi-Wan didn't want to corrupt that. Or worse, see that admiration for his father, the Jedi, turn into his admiration for his father, the Sith. That's a full explanation. That satisfied me. And that has nothing to do with what did his words mean. What we really wanted to know, the right question was, what's causing him to express himself in this abnormal way? It's like the Doctor in Arrested Development.
How's my son?
He's going to be all right. Oh, thank God. He's lost his left hand, so he's going to be all right.
You son of a bitch!
Most of the humor from that doesn't come from interpreting what his words mean. Most of the joke is that there's no reason at all for him to say it like that. So that's the real question here as well. And it's the question with so much of what Jinx says. Lines like this,
Are we still sisters?
or like this.
I mean, but those questions are completely reasonable given the context. I don't know why this person isn't understanding the context. Jinx has been told by Silco that everybody betrays us. Everyone will leave us. Jinx has never felt safe and has felt like the moment she stops being useful, she's going to be left behind too.
Powder fell down a well.
We can understand pretty easily what she's saying, we can interpret, but what kind of person expresses herself this way? And
I am concerned. What kind of person expresses herself this way? This is that line right there. What kind of person expresses themselves that way? Just has a very clear these are the humans worth living. These are the humans where we don't care if they die. Because that's ultimately the usage of madness, not feeling sympathy or empathy, having a label so that you can dehumanize them is common way of eugenics attitudes.
And what is this way? And you can't just say, oh, she's just saying it in a crazy way. That's my question. Crazy way, what does that mean? So what I realized...
What is this crazy talk category? It's not crazy, though. Are we still sisters is not a crazy question. In the context of the situation that Jinx is in, where she doesn't know if Vi still sees her as a sister, and who she didn't think really counted as a sister if you because family's not supposed to abandon each other. She was told by Vi that family sticks together, and the fact that Vi left Jinx suggests that Vi doesn't consider her family anymore. So her asking if they're still sisters is completely reasonable. In the context of the situation, there's nothing that's nothing even atypical, given the context of the situation. And the powder fell down a well thing is just, that's not even that atypical given the circumstance of the situation. She calls herself Jinx now. And she's upset, so she's saying things a bit irrationally, because people say things a bit irrationally when they're upset, and she's put on extra stressors. She's a neurodivergent person who I can understand why she does what she does very clearly. And I don't understand. I mean, I do understand why this person isn't understanding, because they... on some level, I think they don't want to sympathize or empathize with Jinx. Not on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, because of the cultural attitudes of, if you sympathize or empathize with Jinx, then you must be a bad person, because she kills people to defend Silco's cargo. She kills people to defend Silco. She would kill people to defend Silco. And she also kills cops, a large portion of which, or a decent portion of which, are corrupt and viewing her as subhuman. So, like, yeah, it's understandable why you might have an issue with them. It's not... It doesn't have to be a scary thing. It's only scary when you have a reason to fear it. And that involves power hierarchies.
All this was getting at was the question I framed all this with, which is, what is the difference between mental distress and madness? So I think...
Oh god. Okay. Oh god, I hate this. I hate this so much. Why am I doing this to myself? I don't even have to do this. Why am I doing this to myself? Yeah. She meant in terms of trust, not literally, do we share the same DNA? Yeah, and like I said, also, family's a social construct. Vander was her dad, and then Silco became her dad. Family is not about bloodlines. In fact, she probably considered Milo and Claggor to be brothers. Like, they were a family adopted by Vander. Or at least that's the impression I got. And so you... Jinx is being painted as no longer human. Yes. That is and that was never the case. In fact, that was never I don't get the impression that was the point of the showrunners, and I don't get the idea. Like, everything Jinx does has an understandable reason, and even if Jinx did not shoot a rocket at the council, there would not have been peace, because I don't believe Silco would have given up Jinx. Jace put Silco in an impossibly bad situation, which then Jinx had no reason to do. The rocket to the council was essentially a memorial to Powder and a memorial to Silco. She made a choice, and she did the one thing she felt her father wanted more than anything: to make them all pay. And, like, it's understandable given the years of oppression. Like, Heimerdinger, people oftentimes give Heimerdinger too much. There's a weird Heimerdinger can do no wrong type attitude, which is definitely not true. Heimerdinger, I think people forget that Heimerdinger is the way Heimerdinger built the society is the reason, because Heimerdinger was like one of the founders of this, was the founder of the city. So it's because of the way Heimerdinger built the city, and because of Heimerdinger's attitude, that Jace almost committed suicide. And I'm not saying Heimerdinger's intended for that to happen. I'm just saying, like, none of the characters is, like, all good or trying to only do good. They all have their own reasons, and they all are trying to make the world better in their own way, or lash out against all the harm that's being done to them. Also, I hate this. I think it was shortly after this that I
The
stopped.
first big difference is externalizing conflict, and I think that term means something else in other contexts, but it's the most accurate description I could think of. So apologize for the awkwardness in phrasing. But anyway, so all of us experience conflict. Part of us wants X, part of us wants Y. But when that happens, we don't hallucinate a second self and have a dialogue with it. When we miss a loved one, we don't literally see them physically unexpectedly throughout our lives and then have to...
That's not true. That's probably more common than you think in terms of seeing, not necessarily throughout your entire life, but people deal with grief in different ways. And sometimes when someone misses a dead loved one, they think they see them. Like, that's a common thing that's happened throughout society, because because the brain does a lot of weird things, and the brain is like, I miss this person, I'm going to look for this person. And that's
kill them because we're so freaked out. The way Jinx speaks is...
no, she didn't kill that person because she was freaked out. She killed that person because she thought Vi was dead, so she knew this couldn't be Vi, and she forced herself to kill this person to not see Vi. She knew that this person wasn't Vi, and by doing that, by forcing herself to do that, she caused more emotional trauma, which caused her to lash out more.
It's not about her saying how she feels, it's like statements about reality.
Nothing ever stays dead.
That is how reality works.
I should have known better.
Should have known, it's like she's learning about the world. And then other quote that I had before.
This person is twisting Jinx into a stereotype to understand Jinx. This person can't understand Jinx without making her a stereotype. That's messed up.
Before Powder fell down a well, again, it's not a statement about her feelings. Her expression makes it like it's a statement of fact.
It is very clearly a statement about her feelings. It's a statement of fact and it's a statement about her feelings. I'm not quite sure what, like, she knew. Jinx said right after Savika told Silco what happened, Jinx pops down and says, "There was a girl with pink hair. She reminded me of Vi." And Silco's like, "We both know that Vi's dead," or whatever. And then she essentially said something which is like, we can't, like, an artistic expression of her feelings, which were that she can't undo the fact that Vi ever existed. That's what the stuffer in the old baby maker essentially means. But yeah, no. Jinx and Powder are very understandable characters.
Fact. It's not no, I don't want to be called Powder, or no, I don't identify with that name anymore. No.
No, that's not how that works. And in fact, that's twisting the conversation, because you can't say something is literal but also figurative at the same time. If you're gonna say one, or at the very least you need to have a decent explanation. And this is not a decent explanation, because when Jinx says Vi created Jinx, she's talking about the instant after this.
Powder fell down a well. It's like what happened in the world. That's how she's expressing her inner feeling about this. And this is also what's going on with the scratching. Mental distress is an internal phenomenon. Manus takes that.
No, that. This person is essentially saying, if you hallucinate, you're mad and therefore don't deserve sympathy and empathy. If you hallucinate. This person is essentially saying hallucinations, whether auditory or visual, equal you don't deserve sympathy or empathy. Which, on a fundamental level, I have a problem with that attitude. Like, what is this person going to say? That Caveman Valentine is a bad movie because it tried to show schizophrenia in a sympathetic and empathetic light? What's this person supposed to say about that? Like, is that has this person? I mean, this person very clearly has not even talked to anyone who's disabled in a way that this person doesn't like. This person, or if this person has, they're the exception to the rule.
Internal conflict and creates an outer world from it that the character.
Like, it's a movie, or sorry, it's a TV show. It's effectively 3 movies. Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. They're all essentially movie length. They have good quality. You can have visual representations of trauma, and they don't have to be exact, because the point of them is to get neurotypical people to understand what a neurodivergent character is feeling. And this person is taking that and using it as an excuse to dehumanize anyone if they happen to have if they happen to be neurodivergent in the way which this person doesn't like.
Lives in. Lord of the Rings is excellent at this on so many levels, and in a completely different way than Arcane does it. Theoden, cursed with madness, isn't just depicted through his behavior and...
Theoden isn't mad. Theoden isn't mad, and no, that's not... Theoden is being partially possessed by Saruman in this, and being manipulated. Is a mixture of possession, magical influence, and manipulation. Greytongue oftentimes speaks for Theoden, and when Theoden speaks, it's largely Saruman's words through Theoden's mouth. That has nothing to do with madness. And this is just it has nothing to do with neurodivergence even, and this person's weird madness. Sorry about using the ableist term. It's hard. It's one of those things where I'm trying to explain things based off this person's definitions. This person's definitions are terrible, and this person is like ultimately it comes down to these are the facets of neurodivergence which are unacceptable for someone to live with. That's essentially what this seems to be coming down to, which is interesting to try to figure out, so I know what I need to be fighting, because this is utter crap.
Speech, it's externalized, and when he's cured of madness, that's externalized too. Gollum, we talked about this with the...
Don't get me started on Gollum. At best, he's implying only visible disabilities are real. Oh.
the dual selves thing, which Arcane does do with Jinx, but his madness is also externalized in his physical appearance, just like Theoden. Madness is an out...
Oh my god. ugly laws make sense to me. He's saying, if you're too different from humanity, you are a monster that doesn't deserve to live. Because that means you are evil. If you look different and you're too if you're not the right brand of neurodivergent, well, then you're basically it's understandable for people to never feel sympathy or empathy for you. And in fact, let's just run this back to Golem. There is a running theme in Lord of the Rings. At worst, he's implying disabled circumstances you can't overcome makes you unworthy of life. But also, there's a theme throughout Lord of the Rings, which is the sympathy and empathy given to Gollum is the reason the ring is destroyed. The sympathy and empathy given towards people is the reason for the survival of everyone. And this person completely missed that. Like, there are a lot of problems with Lord of the Rings, don't get me wrong, but like, it's a theme. It's a theme. The empathy towards Wormtongue, sorry. The empathy towards Wormtongue is the reason why Saruman is defeated. The whole thing is showing sympathy and empathy and not trying not to be excessively cruel is viewed as a way to save humanity to some degree. Like I said, that's a running theme. Like like I said, them feeling sympathy and empathy. Frodo feeling sympathy and empathy for Gollum is the reason why the ring got destroyed. And this person, that just went over his head. Even though they flat out say it. Gandalf says in the Cave of Moria, maybe the sympathy for Gollum. He's essentially saying Frodo's position about why didn't Bilbo kill Gollum? And Gandalf is like essentially saying that, I mean, I realize Gandalf frames it as pity, but like essentially him showing mercy, Bilbo showing mercy and Frodo showing mercy are the reason why they win at the end. And I don't think this person has that same attitude. I don't think this person understands the Lord of the Rings.
Outer transformation as well. It's a different kind of externalization, but similar impact on the audience. It's like the inner chaos bleeding out into reality. Even Midnight Express, where there's no CGI or anything, does this powerfully just with how Billy looks. And I'm guessing less of my audience is familiar with this one. It's based on the true story of an American who was sentenced to 30 years in a Turkish prison. And it's all about how this brutal environment deteriorates him. And just from the acting, we see such a physical change. Star Wars prequels also do this with Anakin. Not the greatest madness arc, granted. Palpatine is a better example. I don't know if you would call it madness here, though. But Arcane's way is so perfect.
It's not. So I don't think I can even get into the Star Wars. The fact that this person doesn't understand the prequels. Like, the prequels have their own problems, but like ultimately it's about a a faction focused on tradition and a fascist get into conflict, and Anakin gets rejected by the traditionalists, so he joins the fascists. That's essentially that. Ultimately, it's not. Yeah.
Because the scratching is so clearly this overflow from what's inside her head. It's reminiscent of her art style, even. In typical Arcane, it really is expressed in everything about this character. Her madness isn't just this thing consuming the way she sees the world. It's not just something that impacts the way she expresses herself. It's shaped her living environment. It's in the company.
But wrong artistic expression. And so, like, this opinion, everyone in the show's environment is based on their experiences. Mel Medarda, who this person would not consider to be quote unquote mad, Mel Medarda has a painting of the death of a different the leader of some people in Noxus. Mel's mom kills a person, and Mel Medarda drew a painting. Like, people express themselves in different ways, and that shouldn't be viewed as a symptom of dehumanizing. It's the thing where it's like, it's too weird, I don't understand it because I've never experienced this type of trauma, so therefore it's okay to dehumanize you and other you. That's the impression I get from this, because, like, why is it like her brothers are dead, her sister disappeared, and so she made dolls to not feel alone. And she made internalized stuff to make company so she didn't feel alone. I think the problem is, I think people don't understand atypical situations and the things that are helpful in atypical situations, which are not necessarily helpful in typical situations. Not everyone has felt safe their entire life.
She keeps, so to speak. It's overflowed into her style of terrorism, which is all about creating.
I mean, that's... graffiti is not unique to any sort of neurodivergence. I mean, it might be, but then you're essentially saying you can't just say that this is a symptom of some sort of madness. The expressing yourself artistically.
Creating these horrifying spaces and situations. It fits her style of invention.
Those are tactical decisions. Those are legit tactics. Those are well thought out tactics. She's not just going to... Not everything that Jinx does is atypical. She is a human being, first and foremost. She thinks, she plans, she makes decisions. She doesn't always she doesn't blindly follow Milo in her head. It's not that simple. And it's not a dehumanizing, like, you don't
attention, which always has taken the form of a smiling animal she can talk to even since she was powder.
Yeah. Because she was lonely. That's not... Like, what else was she supposed to do? She hung out with Echo sometimes, but Echo also did his own thing. And she couldn't always hang out with Milo, Vi, and Clagger because she was too young to do the criminal stuff. So she needed to make other friends.
As if she's making imaginary friends for herself. And then obviously in the Tea Party scene, it's not just about her being
There's nothing wrong with making imaginary friends for yourself. It's not inherently a horrible thing. I think this person is assuming that's horrible because of if you're true neurodivergent, chances are you're portrayed as a villain. And I think this person is basing Jinx off that way. But Jinx isn't... If you look at this story, Jinx isn't technically the villain of the story. Silco is the villain. Jinx's final actions are because of what Silco says. Silco essentially wins as a villain through Jinx. But that doesn't make Jinx inherently a villain. Most of what Jinx did... See, Jinx does dehumanize enforcers, which is a problem. Her situation isn't horrifying. Yeah, no, it's a very... Her situation makes sense. And you only find it horrifying if you don't understand it and you think that it is inherently a danger. Jinx does not randomly kill people. The enforcers were not randomly killed. She went a little overboard in explosives on the ship, but Jinx was defending cargo for Silco. Jinx was trying to do a job as a defender of the cargo. Like, everything she was doing, most things she was doing has been to either defend people or try to prove that she has value. Like, those are her main two motivations. She kills Silco out of an instinct to defend Vi. She defends the cargo to try to defend the other people, and then but also to be useful. She steals the stone to be useful. She makes the weapon to be useful. Like, she's not horrifying, she just wants to help. That has been a consistent through line of Jinx. Since she was calling herself Powder, she has wanted to help. And, like, that didn't change. She was just put in a position where the only way to help is violence. Involves violence.
theatrical and dramatic. It's her externalizing this conflict as it appears to her mind. This scene is bringing other characters into Jinx world. Okay, so now 3 things about this externalized conflict.
So, like, yeah, she's doing representations, but she's... Jinx has oftentimes not been the decision maker. And when she makes decisions, they're often impulsive. So she's trying to, on some level, she's trying to get Vi to understand her. And which involves expressing herself in that way. and she's also afraid to make her own decision because on some level I think Jinx believes that if she makes her own decision it'll end badly, and at the end she's like, screw it, I'm gonna do it anyways. um but like when it comes to Jinx, like if Jinx, like that whole scene was about wanting Vi's love, everything about that scene, and I know it seems atypical, but like love was essentially at the heart of that scene. If it weren't the case, she would have killed Caitlyn. But she knows if she kills Caitlyn, then, you know, she might lose Vi as a sister, and she doesn't want that. And also, she wants to just be cared about and be safe. And yeah, it's very basic needs that she's trying to get.
Idea. First thing is that it's not necessarily an entire alternate world the characters live in. It can be, but whatever form it takes, it must relate back to identity, to how the character sees himself. It's not a single person caught between worlds. It's one self that belongs to one world and the other self that belongs to the other world.
What? This is just weird. See, this is essentially assuming that people are static beings, and it's also assuming that Jinx does not do things that involve the real world. You don't plan an attack to get the guards away from a building so you can steal a crystal magical orb or whatever, a stabilized I almost said Magitech. That's Final Fantasy. To steal a the Milmadar quote. It's time. Hextech gemstone. So you don't plan something like that out and not live to some degree in the real world. Like, I just...
And this will often take the form of two actual separate named characters, Powder and Jinx, Smeagol and Gollum, Anakin and Vader, but you can do it more subtly too, and I think Denethor is a great example of that. In one world, he's a pathetic king stand-in watching his kingdom crumble, and in the other world, he is meeting his demise heroically like one of the heathen kings of old. And that heroic end isn't complete in its tragic glory if it's not the end of his house as well. So we get this externalization of him seeing Faramir as dead when he's not. That is a fitting end for this grand house of Gondor, which is integral to who Denethor is in this mad world of his. So here's not an actual new identity, but still very much a world that relates back to identity in terms of how
I think this person is just making a stretch because they don't have an actual statement that's justifiable.
defines himself. Second thing, the way they relate to this alternate world is itself as
Wait, that whole thing was... What? That was it? Mad World Blue. Dear God. I hate this.
the source of conflict, and why wouldn't it be? Of course it is. These realities will overlap sometimes, but they'll create tons of contradictions on the important stuff, and it's a nightmare for these characters trying to reconcile those contradictions. It's not that they just sometimes happily move between the real world and the world of their delusions. Another reference that might be too obscure here, but in Arsenic and Old Lace, there's a character who believes he is Teddy Roosevelt, and he lives a complete and content life as Teddy Roosevelt. There's no tension, there's no agony of him trying to choose between these two worlds, these two identities. Nope, he's just Teddy Roosevelt. And that's not discrediting this character, that's how the character works and works well. I'm just saying that is not this madness archetype we're talking about, even though there is a mad world here. For madness, we need a contentious relationship to this externalized delusion world. Gollum is tortured by this dilemma between his two selves, which self to be, and there's this give and take. Sometimes he's more Smeagol, sometimes he's more Gollum, and the ring does seem to universally create this exact kind of tension with its own brand of madness. The characters fall into its corruption and kind of start to take on different identities, and then become aware of it and try to distance themselves, but it's this continuous battle. With Jinx, we really see that battle. She is constantly trying to get the voices to quiet down.
Everyone shut up! I need to think.
She's trying to tear herself away from what they're telling her, even in those lines.
That. I mean, obviously No, not completely. No, it's not like an accurate depiction of Jinx. I know this is a shock that I disagree with this video, but dear Lord.
As we talked about again, it's not just nothing ever stays dead, it's the preface, I should have known. She's not just making an informational statement, she's judging herself for being dumb.
Yeah, but that doesn't fit into...
Basically, I should have known. We're seeing her caught in the process of trying to figure out which reality is real. And the third feature here also relates to an element within that nothing stays dead line. Think about what she's saying for a minute. Nothing stays dead. It's wrong, but it's not just wrong, it's the opposite of true. Nothing stays alive would be the more accurate version.
No, because, like, even... people fight for the dead, and people fight against things that dead people have done. Like, that's not...
Paradox is the feature to highlight here. That's
Once again, this person seems to spout things for rules, but not have a good baseline. Because the conflict... yeah, and with the conflict has related it to inner... no, dash, because it's not a quote. It has largely related to inner conflict with which relates to all mental distress / illness by his own definitions. Dear God. Rule number 4, world of paradoxes. So, everyone is paradoxical sometimes. Like...
what it means for these characters to exist in this intersection between the real world and the mad world. This statement in particular, just to draw the paradoxical side of it even more, Jinx's trauma goes back to these deaths in her past. The impact of the death for her is that they stay alive, that they never died, even though they're dead.
But she also knows that they're dead. It's not... It's not that she's unaware that they're dead. It's just that they're also, in a sense, not dead because they because she needed to have company and she didn't know
Death is the cause of her trauma. See this
how to
madness?
cope.
That's the feeling we should try to capture with these mad characters. It's not just the evil of madness, it's not just the disconnect of madness, but the paradoxical world it forces on its...
Oh yes, already mentioned as evil. Wait, what was it? Evil.
That they never died, even though their deaths is the cause of her trauma. See this mad spiral it creates? That's the feeling we should try to capture with these mad characters. It's not just the evil of madness, it's not just the disconnect of madness, but the paradoxical world it forces on its victims.
He hates and loves the ring, as he hates and loves himself.
And we see this.
Yeah, but lots of people hate and love themselves. Like that's not unique to anything. That's everyone has paradoxical elements to their personality. I want everyone else to take care of themselves. But on some level, I don't care if I take care of myself. That being said, I do force myself to take care of myself sometimes. Which is what's happening next week. Because I'm taking... Because non-verbal levels of stress are not helpful for getting things done. Kind of forced in that position.
Chilling duality over and over with Jinx. She drudges up the Valdiani, the traumatic item of her childhood guilt, but she puts sparklers around it like it's something to celebrate. She can't figure out if she cherishes Wise Bunny or hates what it represents, so she has two. She hits one on her desk and she nails one to the wall. We have both. We're living in the contradiction. And her burn it all down moment, this destructive act, is represented in this bizarre but powerful mix of doomsday aesthetic with the red sky and the beautiful triumphant shooting star aesthetic with the path of the missile. The madness isn't represented as total trauma or total destruction or total hatred. It's celebrating trauma. It's beautiful.
It's first off, the entire show is beautiful. You can't just take a beautiful moment and just be like, oh, this means something special. The entire show is beautiful. It's fucking gorgeous. Like you can't just be like, oh, this gorgeous moment means this. No, she's crying. She's crying and she's sad and angry and makes an impulsive decision to destroy the council. And we know she has good aim, and she's smart enough to actually hit the council with a rocket, which is relatively impressive.
Beautiful doom. It's double bunny. Okay, so now where does this all take us? What do we do with it? So the climax of these arcs, when they're tragic, is absolute commitment to the mad world, accomplished through some extreme act that only makes sense.
Oh my god. That... I hate that. That sentence is awful. So... I'm just gonna type in wrong and like a million exclamation points. Jinx destroys the council because it's what, to her knowledge, Silco wanted. It's a memorial to Silco and a lashing out against society. That's all it is. In fact, it's celebrating triumph of survival, if anything. Well, it's not. It's not celebrating anything. And like like I said, she's crying. She is incredibly distraught, and you hear the voiceover of Silco saying, "We will show them. We will show them all." So she is shooting the rocket both as a memorial to Silco, because of his death, and because she's lashing out against against a society which has only ever hurt her and hurt people she cared about, and throughout her entire life, enforcers killed her mother. Enforcers, she thought for a long time, enforcers killed killed Vi. Sorry, she thought for a long. I don't know how long she processed that Silco killed Vander, but like she was also told about how Vander tried to kill Silco. And it's just, it makes perfect sense for someone incredibly distressing things. I mean, her last words were, I thought you could love me for who I am, but turns out you changed too. Here's to the new us. And it was the final acceptance that Jinx had that she has changed and that she will never go back. There was a hint. There was a desire, I think, for Jinx to go back to how things were when things were happy and safe. But I don't. It became clear that that wasn't a realistic option at that point, and she made a decision. And she made a decision to lash out against a society that has only ever done her harm and honor Silco's death. Because both Silco and Jinx have cared about loyalty. And she was being loyal to the memory of Silco. Like, everything she did there makes perfect sense. Like, just take out the neurodivergent part, and everything she did, almost anyone could potentially do in her situation. The only difference is we know about all the other stuff. But, I mean, she's told that she's a monster, that she's too far gone, that she's not worth living by pretty much everyone but Silco. Silco's the only person who said, you're fine just the way you are. And it's okay to care about yourself, essentially. Silco's the only person who said that sort of stuff. And she accidentally killed him. So yeah, it's a bit of a traumatic experience. And an experience which can apply to anything, any sort of personality aspect that's different from how society wants people to be. It can be applied to LGBTQ people. It can be applied to all sorts of neurodivergence. I mean, arguably, she's potentially, to some degree, autistic coded at the start of the show. And if we're talking about it's just, I don't think he can accept that she's a person. And I think that cognitive dissonance has caused this person to make a video where he originally asks the right questions but hits cognitive dissonance because that means accepting someone who he feels like he shouldn't accept as a person. And because he couldn't deal with that, he made up an entirely new set of rules for reality to try to justify his cognitive dissonance. Hold on, let me save as... Oh, fine. It's the quotation marks, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm saving it as a title so I don't forget. I think I'm going to be getting on to play some League of Legends in a bit. I know it's a shock that an Arcane fangirl would play League of Legends. Actually, that is kind of a shock because that's a running gag. Is no one who watches Arcane plays League of Legends. Because Arcane is a good show and League of Legends is a toxic community. But yeah. So I will see anyone who wants to on Twitch, and remember, I won't be here next week. There's always the possibility that I might make a short or any number of things, but I haven't made any decisions, and I do need to do stuff. There's a lot of documentation and life related stuff that I need to do. So with that, I'll see you in a couple of weeks on YouTube and or Twitch and or the other YouTube channel. For now, take care of yourselves, and yeah, take care of yourselves. Bye.